Welcome back, class. Today we're going to be talking about the male reproductive system and focusing on the anatomy. Now, the male system is pretty simple compared to the female system, which we're eventually going to get to. However, let's just start going over it. It's divided up into ducts, accessory glands, and then more or less the big three components. Now, the biggest, most important of any reproductive system, men or women, is what is the gonad? What is the organ that is going to produce our gametes? In males, it's testes. They are paired, and those are going to produce our sperm. The male gonads. They're located within the scrotum, which is essentially just a little pouch to hold them. I talked about this in class a little bit, where the scrotum actually descends and ascends depending on temperature, because sperm have to be produced at a temperature lower than normal body heat, which is why if it's super hot outside, which is why the testes have to be outside of the body. If it's cold, the scrotum is going to pull up, bringing the testis closer to the body to warm it, and if it's super warm outside, or if the body is super hot, the scrotum is going to descend, bringing the balls away from it to allow for sperm production. Now, sperm travels through a series of ducts that will eventually lead to the opening in the penis and leave the body through the process of ejaculation. However, accessory organs, or accessory glands, I'm using the word interchangeably, sorry, accessory glands secrete semen. Sperm and semen are two different things, which we'll talk about in the physiology section. Now, here is essentially an overview of some of the areas and the terms that you are going to learn in this section and will be tested on. If we want to follow this process out, sperm production and gametes start in the testis. It will eventually leave the testis, stored in the epididymis, until they are ready. Once they are ready and the signal is sent for an ejaculation, it is going to go through the ductus deferens, loop around, and you can see here seminal vesicle, prostate gland, bulbourethral glands. These are the accessory glands, which are going to secrete semen, which is the fluid that accompanies the sperm through these ducts or tubules, and then eventually lead out, which is not labeled here. Oh, there it is, urethra. Yes, for men, we use the same tube to pee and ejaculate out of. Lovely. So, let's get started on the most important section, the testes. The testes are divided up into lobules, or essentially different individual sections. These contain tightly coiled loops called seminiferous tubules, where sperm is produced. Think about it kind of looking like this. They're super coiled, and we're going to get a photo of it in a little bit. Now, the testis performs two important functions: sperm production and the secretion of androgen hormones, primarily testosterone. So, in the seminiferous tubules, which are found in the lobules, the seminiferous tubules have two cell types. We have spermatogenic cells, which is exactly what it says on the tin. Those produce sperm, and you can remember that by sperm, atogenic. It has the word what it does in it. There's also suctacular cells, and these support sperm production. The main one that you really want to learn about and everything is the interstitial cells, or Leydig cells. These are found in between the seminiferous tubules, and they are going to produce and secrete androgens, primarily testosterone. So I just scrolled a little bit ahead in the section, but you can see this cross section of a testis. You can see that there are lobules with those seminiferous tubules all hypercoiled and spooled in there. These are going to produce sperm at the spermatogenic cells, and the interstitial or Leydig cells are going to produce testosterone. So after after sperm is produced, it travels through a series of ducts bathed in semen secreted by accessory organs. This semen provides nourishment and support. And these ducts are involved in ejaculation. Let's talk about them. First one, epididymis. It's filled with ductules, and it is the site of sperm maturation and storage. So if you can see here, and the cross-section is a little bit difficult, but if we look right back here, the testis is where that sperm is produced. However, at that stage, it is immature, and it actually needs to go hang out at the epididymis to be stored for when it's going to be ejaculated and mature. Okay, now if we see here, where are we going to go up to? We're going to go up the ductus deferens. This begins at the tail of the epididymis, where it widens, and then it is going to shoot up. Ejaculatory duct, short duct. The next structure that receives sperm from the ductus deferens ampulla, location of the accessory organ, called the seminal vesicle. This guy right here. I'm actually getting a little bit ahead of myself as I'm trying to describe what the process is happening at each of the area, but it's really just this in terms of it, and we're going to go into detail a little bit more. So we have the testis, which is divided into lobules. In those lobules, you have tightly coiled loops called seminiferous tubules, and there you have two cell types. You have spermatogenic cells, which create sperm, and then you have sustacular cells, which support sperm production, and the most important one that I want you to know is interstitial cells, Leydig cells. These produce testosterone. Now, once sperm is produced, it is going to hang out at the epididymis to mature and wait until ejaculation happens. Ejaculation happens, cool. All the sperm is going to leave the epididymis and go through the ductus deferens. And in that process, it's going to pass through the seminal vesicle, the prostate gland, and the bulbal urethral gland in the urethra. That urethra is eventually going to bring the semen out of the body, and hopefully it is going to make its way to the ovum. Now, let's talk a little bit more about these accessory sex glands. They are exocrine glands. Remember, endocrine means that it's going directly into your bloodstream. Exocrine means that it's going somewhere else. This is going to produce the liquid portion of the semen. And semen is just a combination of this liquid that comes from the accessory sex glands and sperm. Seminal vesicles. That's that, I don't know what you would call it. It looks kind of like a caterpillar. This is going to produce seminal fluid. It's a yellowish secretion, which makes up about 60 to 70% of semen volume, and it's composed of fructose. And this is a sugar that is essentially going to provide energy to the sperm so that they can swim up the vaginal canal. Prostaglandins. These stimulate smooth muscle contractions in both genders' reproductive tracts, which increase sperm viability. There is coagulating protein and enzymes. Both of these come from the prostate. These combine to form a temporary clot of semen in the female reproduction tract. Now, the pH of the seminal fluid is alkaline, and this is to neutralize the acids in both the male urethra and the female reproductive tract. Now, I don't know if your mind is worrying thinking about, wait a minute, why do we form a temporary clot of semen in the female reproductive tract? Or why is that stuff acidic, and how come this has to make it neutral? We'll talk about it in a little bit, but keep those questions coming. The prostate. It's an egg-sized gland inferior to the urinary bladder. It surrounds the urethra and the ejaculatory ducts. This right here. It has prostatic secretions. This makes up about 20 to 30% of semen volume. It's the milky fluid. This contains citrate, another sugar that sperm can use for ATP synthesis, prostate-specific antigen, PSA, some other enzymes. This will eventually dissolve the semen clot in the female reproductive tract to allow the sperm to swim. Antimicrobial chemicals inhibit some bacterial growth to decrease the risk of infection in the female reproductive system. How nice. So, long and short, how does sperm work? 5 minutes post-ejaculation, the semen coagulates due to the activities of the clotting proteins from the seminal vesicles and enzymes from the prostate. This prevents the semen from leaking out of the female reproductive tract, so it gets stuck in there and can actually stay there to swim. After 15 to 30 minutes, semen clot breaks up due to the activity of prostate-specific antigen and other anticoagulants from the prostate. Don't need to know it. Sperm cells are gradually released from the clot, activated, and they're really activated by citrate and fructose, and begin their ascent up the female reproductive tract. Alkaline pH of semen makes the sperm fully motile and begin the process of capitation. Now, let's talk about the purpose of it. I know that I just listed it out and everything, but let's chat. Now, the antimicrobial chemicals. Precum is essentially a secretion of the liquid portion of semen before there's sperm involved. This essentially cleans out the male urethra tract and tries to get rid of any potential bacteria that could be there before things go in. Now, how come we actually coagulate the sperm once it gets into the female reproductive system? Well, first one, prevents it from leaking out. But the vagina is acidic. This is so that bacteria have a really difficult time growing there, but a lot of sperm essentially dies on contact when it enters into the vagina because of the acidity. By clotting it, you can eventually protect some of the inside ones from that acid, as well as the pH of the seminal fluid is alkaline, and that will neutralize some of the acid in the female reproductive tract. So once the sperm is eventually released, it isn't essentially just dying on impact. Now, here is a table, 26.1, which goes over essentially everything that I just talked about above in a nice little neat orderly table. In the next video, we're going to be talking about the physiology of the male reproductive system. See you there.